We're back. Christina Gutierrez here with Simple CFO. We are here opening up the Simple CFO Case Files once again, and we're pulling back the curtain on exactly how we help real estate investors and other, clients in the business completely transform their business. And we're hearing it directly from the CFO that actually does the work, actually uses the system, actually uses our tool, and walks through our processes every single day to transform these businesses. Today, we're here with Tommy Robinson, who has been a CFO with us since January of 2025. It's a little over a year. Tommy's amazing. Not only does he live close to me in the same area I do, he has been completely instrumental in Simple CFO's processes to the theme that he follows everything to a T. He is a perfect example of how we use our tools and processes with clients. He has quickly become a lead CFO for us and takes place in all the training. He is just a true example of how we use these tools and work with our clients. So, Tommy, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Christina. I'm glad I could be here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'll try to live up to it.
Absolutely. I know that you will. All right. So to start living up to it, give me a 60-second version of no names here, but the type of clients that you work with and what you've seen our systems do for them.
Okay. Well, most of the clients I work with, they're real estate investors or developers, or they have construction businesses. And so they've usually built a successful company, but the financial systems have not kept up with their growth. So they're generating revenue, but they don't always have a clear visibility to profitability or cash flow or how to scale safely. And a lot of times you hear the saying, well, I know I made a lot of money, but I just don't know what happened to it or where it went. So what we do at Simple CFO is install financial operating systems for their business. Things like the Profit First cash management system, clean financial reporting, and we institute dashboards to help owners take control of financial decisions instead of just using guesswork.
Couldn't have said it better than myself. That's exactly what we do. And, real estate clients, what type of clients would you say you see most of? Flippers, wholesales? What's your bread and butter?
My bread and butter is probably those who are in the flipping business, followed next by those who do long-term rentals.
Okay. We see a lot of those come in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's awesome. So now you see what type of clients he works with. And of course, it doesn't matter what type of business you have, right? Everybody shares the same pain. Everybody shares the same feelings when we all become entrepreneurs. So your first call with clients, and which we often call the battle plan call, what do you see as their financial pain? What are they going through that you see kind of like a reoccurring theme for everyone?
Well, I think before they actually reach out and they get to us, they're going through a lot of anxiety. So that first call for them is usually a moment of relief for the client, because by the time someone reaches out to us, they typically built that successful business, but they feel like their finances are in chaos. Like, as I mentioned before, a lot of things that they'll tell me is, we're making a lot of revenue, but we don't know where the money's going, or I can't predict the cash flow. My books don't match. I don't trust what's in my books, or, hey, tax season's always a scramble for me. So that very first call is really about diagnosing what those pain points are. And we'll walk through things with them, such as how the business actually makes money, what their biggest financial stress points are, whether their books are reliable, and what the cash flow cycles look like. And so from there, I start building a plan to help them get that financial clarity that they want and develop financial controls.
Yep, that's about right. They all have that financial pain, and we want to come in and get those systems working right. So that's a good thought, because some of them come in with accountants, bookkeepers. They're like, oh yeah, well, I've worked with them. How come they didn't tell me? So what's so different about what we do versus, their typical accountant bookkeepers that they've worked with before?
Sure. So most accountants and bookkeepers, they really focus on just recording the data and focus on what's already happened. And that is really important, but it doesn't help the owner make any better financial decisions. And so what we do at Simple CFO is we help them focus on developing financial operating systems for their business. So that includes things like implementing the Profit First cash management system, putting in CFO dashboards for them, budgeting and cash flow forecasting, as well as strategic financial planning and modeling for them. So instead of just reporting history, we're helping the owner control what happens to them. And it's important because we are somebody that has experience in the financial world and in the business world. So it goes a step beyond just relying on the bookkeeper or even just going into Chat GPT and searching real quick about what's wrong with my business, because Chat GPT has never really experienced business. And as CFOs, we all have a diverse background and worked in the financial industry for a long time, especially with those in the real estate industry. So we are able to give them first world insights.
Absolutely. You got that right. Because, bookkeepers just wrap it up. But, give them credit, right? Let's give them credit, because without proper financials and proper, history recorded, we can't do our job. So going into that, like that's kind of what we do in the first 60 days. So we have to assess it. We have to figure out what's going on. So talk me through how you work with your clients in the first 60 days.
Okay. The first 60 days are really about building this foundation for them. And there are three major areas that we focus on. First one is the data cleanup and the financial clarity. So we make sure the financial data is actually reliable. So those very first meetings, I'm reviewing the books, the chart of accounts, all of their financial statements, the statement of cash flows, the balance sheet, the income statement, identifying errors, reconciling accounts, and then establishing accurate financial reporting. Because if those numbers aren't trustworthy, then the owner can't make any good decisions. There's a acronym I like, GIGO, which I pronounce GIGO, and really stands for garbage in, garbage out. So if the numbers aren't accurate, and then none of the reporting is either. So that's what first thing we focus on, is that data cleanup and the financial clarity. All right. Second thing is establishing baseline metrics. Once we have clean data, we establish the baseline financial metrics, things like revenue trends, gross profits, operating expenses, cash runway, debt exposure. These give us a clear picture of how the business is performing financially. And then it's time to have the initial profit first rollout. So with the profit first system, that includes setting up dedicated bank accounts. And generally, I like to have 6 bank accounts I set up for my clients. We'll have the income account, the profit account, an owner's pay account, taxes, operating expenses. And then also I'd like to have the reserve account. And I tell my clients this, it's kind of like back when our grandparents were trying to budget. Back in the old days, they got a paycheck, they cashed their paycheck, and they brought out 5 envelopes. Okay, and they labeled each one. One envelope was for the mortgage. Then they had one for insurance, one for utilities, one for food, and then one for rainy day funds. And this is exactly what we're doing, but on the financial sense. We're using bank accounts instead of envelopes, and we're earmarking these funds so they go for one purpose and one purpose only. And this immediately changes how cash grows through the business. So instead of profit being an afterthought, profit becomes a planned allocation. 3 of those accounts that I mentioned, the owner's pay account, the owner's profit account, and the owner's tax account, I like to call those the Holy Trinity, because those are the 3 main accounts that owners will forget about, or when building a business, get neglected. The owner sometimes is the last one to get paid. And so we want to make this a focus, not an afterthought.
Amen. And that's true, because, a lot of people that come to us, and, I can say this from being, sales calls, listening to a bunch of, I feel like I know every client because I see all their names that are all familiar to me. But, a lot of them, they don't pay themselves. They don't even know what they need. And then they just take out money when they need it. And then, you can really drain your business taking that money out, and you don't see that, they don't realize it. You don't see what you're taking out. So that's like the best thing you can set up for them, is making sure that they pay themselves. Why start a business, right? To pay everyone else.
Exactly. It's funny because when I first joined Simple CFO, one of the CFOs used to tell people, and I use the same saying myself, is a lot of times when we meet with an owner, one of 2 things will happen. Either the business is robbing from the owner, or the owner is robbing from the business, meaning that either the business is taking all the money and the owner works for free, or the owner's just taking out way too much, not leaving enough left for the business. So we help fix that.
I like that. Okay. Well, that's a great segue to this question, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I read the book. That's a big question, or they come to us because they read Profit First for Real Estate Investors, the book that David wrote. So, and they think, we want to set owners up to where they can read the book and maybe try and set it up for themselves, but it really is not a one size fits all. So how is it different when they come to us versus a DIY, I can do it myself way?
Yeah, it is different. And the book is a great concept. And I love the book. And of course, everyone that comes to us, we recommend that they actually read that book as well first. But implementation is where most businesses struggle. Because every business is different, as you just mentioned. There's different revenue cycles, different cost structures, tax situations, and the obligations. And so what we help do is the CFOs, we help engineer a custom profit first system that fits into specific business needs. Because it's not a one size fit all. There are round blocks and square pegs and square holes, so we help address that. For example, a real estate investor with holding costs has a very different cash cycle than a service level company. So we design allocation percentages and bank structure so that the system actually works for that particular business.
Yeah, I love how you said it's not a one size fits all. And I always say, and sometimes people think that because some people are turned off by like, oh my God, I have to open 6 accounts. I'm not doing that. That's so difficult. It's really not. It's really simple to do. It's just like opening one account because you're only transferring it to where it needs to go. And then that puts you, what I always say is like, it puts you in control of your money, not your money in control of you.
Exactly right. And a lot of those customers actually already have multiple bank accounts. So at that point in time, we just evaluate what they have and see what can be repurposed. So instead of saying, hey, you're going to have to open up 6 new bank accounts, I say, hey, I see you have 4 accounts right now. We're going to repurpose 4 of those accounts and just open up 2 additional ones.
That's smart. And that's a good way to say it because that's why we're called Simple CFO, right? We want to be simple. We don't want to make it difficult for you. So that's our systems. That's why we built it. That's why we started the tools and the process. So when we kind of engineered it to where Simple CFO has a process, right? David wrote the book. We started Profit First. We found how important it is and how good it worked to actually use that good old envelope system that Tommy mentions. So then from there, we know that a lot of people use the same software. QuickBooks Online is a huge software. We've seen other ones that are pretty well known, but then a dashboard was created. So talk us through, how do you use the dashboard? What do you track? How does it help clients make decisions and you help them make decisions? So just give me a specific example.
Sure. So, the dashboard is the one area where there's a unified reporting tool. So instead of having 10 different Excel workbooks that someone's got to flip between Excel and QuickBooks, it's one dashboard. It's a dashboard that it's set up in as a Google Doc, but it connects directly to QuickBooks so that the QuickBooks data feeds into it and updates it every single day. So our dashboard focuses on key drivers of the business, things like revenues, gross profits, cash balances, cash runway, and key operational metrics. The goal is to turn financial data into something that the owner can actually use to help making decisions. For example, one client is focused on doing more deals, but the dashboard showed them that their margins were shrinking. And so what we did is, instead of just increasing deal volume, we started adjusting pricing and looking at ways to increase margins, to improve the cost structure, to improve profitability. And that's the kind of insight that turns financial data into strategic decision making. And so that's something that they don't get from just the bookkeeper, right? It's having the CFO being able to help them interpret the data and use the dashboard as a tool to get that data.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps. All right. So I'll challenge you here a little bit with that because, clients can go in their dashboard, right? Because it's a CEO dashboard, not a CFO dashboard. Now they use us to understand it, but they can access it. Like, instead of going into QuickBooks and saying, okay, I got to go to reports, I got to pull this report, you can actually just pull up a Google sheet and see everything. You don't even have to go into QuickBooks, really. So,
Right.
but not all the sheets in there are as intuitive to a client. So tell me why it helps to have, a financial advisor, CFO on your side that can actually walk you through what the dashboard does for them.
Sure. So the dashboard does have more than just the spit out reports that QuickBooks provides. There's also reports in there that we use, such as the action plan, where the CFO has an action plan that is within the dashboard, one of the very first tabs, and we actually set up what the goal is, or specific goals that we need to meet with that client, what the action steps are, who the owners are, and then the notes going forward with that. There's also a stoplight report where it identifies key components of the business, and we evaluate those on a easy to understand red, yellow, green basis. So if it's green, hey, that component of the business is doing well. If it's yellow, then that needs to have some concerns that need to be addressed. And if it's red, then hey, that's a very serious area that's going to affect the business that we need immediate attention on. And we help evaluate those components with them on our meetings. Every meeting, we can go through those with them and create action items. That's not something that they can just get by looking into QuickBooks or by doing the reports themselves. Also, we also have our goal tab and our forecast, the cash forecasting tabs. And so we can literally, create the budgets for them, put them into the dashboard, and then have a cash forecast tab that takes that budget and updates it with real-time reporting. So as each month goes by, it fills in with the actual numbers. And then we can also make manual adjustments to that as well moving forward on the forecast portion, so that they can see a living, breathing cash forecast week to week as they meet with us, and they have different information, new data points or things that might change in terms of revenue coming in, or the cost of goods sold may change. They might have decided to change their marketing spend for the remaining portion of the year. And we'll go in there with them, and we'll go through and make those changes in the forecast so that their cash forecast can be dynamic, and they can see 3 months, 6 months down the road what their cash should look like, what they should have in the bank at the end of each month.
I like how you say that. So I guess you would consider the forecast like a rolling forecast, because business is volatile and real estate is even more volatile. So we need to make sure that we're in there adjusting it, and they may not catch everything. So it's good.
And it's something that I tell each one of my clients from the very first call we have. When we have the battle plan call, I tell them, we're going to end every single call going through your cash forecast and making updates, so that every time we meet, we have the most accurate data moving forward to make a decision with.
I like it. Yeah. Accurate data. I always say, sometimes people make mistakes, but it's as long as you're directionally accurate and you're leading them in the right direction and where they're going and making strategic decisions, then that's important. But we don't want completely wrong data either. So something we need to constantly stay ahead of, right?
Right.
Absolutely. All right. So if you had to pick one client success story that demonstrates, how Simple CFO system works, full transformation. I know you've done a lot of 60-day clients and kind of really set some people up with this business in a box and, set them up with something great. So give me that story of how they came to Simple CFO, what you did with them, and how they ended up turning out, or even where they are now if you're still working with them.
Sure. Well, let me give you a little montage instead, because success with Profit First can look different for different clients. Sometimes a client implements the system and continues independently after the 60 days are over. Sometimes they retain us for ongoing projects. So they do the 60 days and then they like us so well that they maintain us for after 60 days on a recurring basis. Sometimes they launch a new business using their Profit First from day one after they started with us during a 60-day program. For example, I have a client that started with me as a 60-day client, and we implemented the Profit First system for those 60 days, and it really helped him out. And he saw right offhand how great it was. At the same time, he was launching a new venture with a partner. And so he decided that as soon as the 60 days were over, he was going to roll into a reoccurring CFO meeting, but for the new venture. And so for the new venture, we actually helped set up the financial modeling, budgets, cash flow planning, and implementing the Profit First structure immediately, so that this new company is now past the planning stage and it's in an initial rollout. And it's been designed from the beginning to operate with the Profit First principles. I have another client that decided they were going to go ahead and switch industries. So they started in the real estate industry, and we implemented Profit First for them. We got them working on proper financial structures, had Profit First allocations and cash flow planning set up for them. And then the business started changing. Business shifted, And he decided to switch industries. And when he decided to switch industries, he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my new business. It's not going to be in real estate, but I need to have this CFO support from day one, in the very beginning. So from day one, we actually set out to make sure that his business had the profit first principles established from day one. So we start off with basic financial modeling and financial financial cash flow projections, and set up everything from the very beginning, from the first day one bank accounts, so that he had profit first implemented right away. And now his business just opened his doors 12 days ago. He's very happy and feels he's on the right path already. And then, that is great. And then my full transformation story. I have a client that I currently still have, and they came to Simple CFO. They had a very strong flip business and also construction business as well. The construction business really was in business only to support their flipping business, and they didn't really take any outside clients. But they had a lot of issues, such as unreliable bookkeeping, financial reports that they could not trust because of unreliable bookkeeping. There was no visibility into cash flow, extreme high levels of debt, and there was a pattern of filing taxes late, so they were always left with IRS penalties for filing their taxes back in October instead of filing taxes in April or making their estimated payment in April. They'd wait until October to figure out what they owed and have to pay penalties on that. So during the first 60 days, we focused on creating financial clarity for them. And one of the biggest steps was identifying all of that outstanding debt and building a comprehensive debt structure. That allowed us to begin developing a debt reduction strategy with them. We also implemented the profit first system so that every dollar into the business had a purpose. We created structured allocations for profit, owner compensation, taxes, operating expenses, and cash flow forecasting, so that we actually were forecasting when they were going to get paid. They actually could see now that they were going to have a regular paycheck. This allowed the owner to begin receiving those regular scheduled payments. And then we started focusing on financial infrastructure improvements. So initially, as I mentioned, they didn't trust their bookkeeping. But what we did is we tried to work with their existing bookkeeper for the first 120 days. And so we went and did the financial assessments. We went and told the bookkeeper what we had found and areas that we thought that they could improve on and make changes on. The bookkeeper was slow and unresponsive. So after about 120 days, after discussions with the owner, we transitioned them into the Simple CFO bookkeeping. That allowed us to clean up their books, reconcile all their accounts, and produce reliable monthly financial statements. All right. So then once we have those statements produced, we are able to implement that Simple CFO dashboard so that now they can track revenue, profits, cash balances, and financial health metrics. And now we just rolled out to them one of our new dashboard tabs, which is our project cash management tab. And that is so exciting for this client because they do because of the flips they do, they're able now to track project budgets, cash inflows, cash outflows, capital requirements. Allows them to forecast cash needs before a problem ever occurs. And now today, after being with us for, it'll be a year in April, so about 11 months, the business operates with clean monthly financials, a profit first system, regular owner compensation, debt reduction strategy that's in place, that's been paying down debt, project level financial tracking. They can actually log on and see a P&L by project, a balance sheet by project, which they could never do before. We have annual budgeting and cash flow forecasting. As I mentioned, we update that cash flow forecast every single meeting that we have. And now, for the first time in the history of their business, they filed their taxes on time for their business, and which means they're going to be able to file their personal taxes on time April 15th and not have to pay any penalties with the IRS for the first time ever as a business owner. So that business went from financial chaos to operating with clear financial systems that support growth for them. So we were pretty happy with that.
That is so awesome. And I can tell how excited you are. All right. So the question of the day, though, did they have the money put aside into the tax account to make that tax payment?
They believe they do.
So that's the coolest thing about it.
Now we'll see, because every tax situation is different. And so when they go to their CPA, they'll have to look at their different deductions they have and whatever credits they qualify for with their kids, with their kids, and they get deductions for home office and all those type of things. But at the end of the day, they believe that they'll have that set aside and be able to make that payment in April without penalties and interest.
That's awesome. And doing it on time, like, what a relief that you can actually get it done on time. You're not waiting. Usually it's because you're waiting on somebody else, or you need a K-1 or you need something. But if it's all rests on you, like, get it done, get out of the way so you don't have to pay a ton of money, because the IRS isn't going to let it slide, Like, no one wants to pay the IRS if we don't have to. So all those stories are awesome. Like, I love hearing these stories, and I love seeing like our CFOs and been so passionate about what we do and actually helping the businesses. So I can see it. I hope everyone else can see it. You can see the excitement of like just the transformation. It's clicking with clients. They're making money. They're paying their bills timely. They're paying off debt, whatever it is. That it's just, pretty cool to see them go through that.
It is really cool to see them do that. And, I really believe that one of the biggest things that we see in most entrepreneurs is that they don't have a revenue problem. They have a financial systems problem. And so once we get the right system in place, profitability becomes even more predictable for them.
You got that right. Yeah. Predictability is key, because less stress. Awesome. Well, I love the stories. Thank you for being here, Tommy. That's awesome. It's been a really good podcast and lots of good stories, lots of good content. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast right now and thinking, what are the key things? Hey, I have a lot of debt to pay off and I don't even know how to pull out under this rock, or I have no financial systems in place. A bookkeeper's not going to do that for you. Your basic bookkeeper that just aligns the historical transactions. Your CPA is just going to file taxes for you. So, think if it resonates with you and you really want to find out more information, just head over to simplecfo.com. You can book a discovery call, find out what we do, find out if we have the ability to help your business and we can turn your chaos into clarity. Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate you being here. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you all in the next episode.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Simple CFO Case Files on the Profit First for Real Estate Investors podcast. If you found this helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our guest interviews featuring other real estate investors and our Profit First chats with David Richter. If you're ready to bring clarity and structure to the finances in your business, visit profitrei.com to apply for a free financial discovery call with our team.